Everybody. I hope you've had a stimulating break, both in terms of the coffee and the conversation. We are now coming to this session in which we're going to pick up some of the themes that were picked up, that were raised in the detailed case study presentations that we were hearing before the break, and really look more broadly at what do we know about how to improve the living conditions, the working conditions of people in cities, what works, who needs to be involved, and hear from people who've been. I'm particularly pleased to welcome the panellists who we're going to be hearing from first, because what we're really, I think, everybody who will be speaking is operating, at the sort of intersection of academia, of activism, of community engagement, and, have been involved in a number of very practical projects, doing, not just thinking about how to improve people's lives and do some of the things that we all know need to be done. Let me introduce the speakers. We're going to have a brief sort of interactive panel discussion, and then we will open it up to all of you in the room and I believe we now have 250 people online as well, participating online, which I think is probably something of a record for ODI. So I'm really pleased to see that. On my left here we have David Satterthwaite, who I imagine is known to many of you as Senior Fellow at IIED. He's been involved in a huge amount of interesting research and activism on urban issues for many years. I should also apologise, we were hoping to have Julio Calderon on the panel, but as so often in this business was unable to get a visa. So it is a source of constant embarrassment to me that that we try our best to collaborate with the experts all over the world, but too many obstacles are too often put in the way. So let me extend my apologies to you, Julio, if you are managing to listen. Then we have, as you can see here, we have connections from different parts of the world. In the Netherlands, I believe, can you just wave when I've say your name? We have Eugenie Birch, who is professor, again, I imagine very well known to many of you, professor of urban research at the University of Pennsylvania, and also crucially the chair of the UN Habitat's World Urban Campaign. And also with her, Susan Parnell, who is, again, a professor at the African Centre for Cities. Obviously, we haven't talked very much about Africa yet in the conversation, so I hope we will have the opportunity to hear from you. And in Thailand, we're extremely lucky to be joined by Somsuk Bunyabancha, who is, again, I imagine, very well known to many of you, the Secretary General of the Asian Coalition for Housing Rights, a very long and distinguished reputation as an academic and activist, and clearly someone who's been very much engaged in policy questions around urbanisation and housing for many years. So we're really delighted that all of you have made considerable efforts to join us today. Let me start off by kind of raising the question that we left hanging in the air at the end of the last panel, which is really what is the most important thing that we need to do? Maybe I can turn this over first to you, Susan, and Eugenie. There are a long list of things that were raised as the sort of key components of progress in the different case studies. But to you, what are the most important things from that long list? You need to unmute your microphone. I think your microphone is muted. Can you unmute it? We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now as well as you?
Yes, wonderful. Thank you. That's a relief.
Can you still see me is what I need to know, because yeah, you can see us and hear us? So that does good. Yeah? Does that, can you?
Yes,
okay?
yes, we can see you. We can see you and hear you, but we're muting our microphone here, so it's all going to go unnervingly quiet, but that's only so that we can hear you better.
Excellent, excellent, no problem. Look, I think you do need to understand things in different places and different contexts. So I think that the first thing to be careful of is generalization. But having said that, for me there are a couple of fairly high-level points we could make about where we want to put the priority in beginning to make things better for people. And in terms of where we're at specifically at the moment, for me, it's quite important that we lift our eyes up from the individual and the household to understand the slightly bigger scale of the neighborhood and the city. So how do we make places that work for people and that are nice, that are safe, that are sustainable in various kinds of ways, not just how do we focus on individual needs, because the emphasis so far has been very much on the individual. So that's the first thing that I'd say. And then the second thing that I'd say is that it's terribly important for us as we begin to engage in urban development questions, which really are about the built form as well as about citizens' lives, is that we don't get fixated on the very present, because slightly longer perspective makes us realize that it's important that we build for now, we focus on issues of poverty and improvement now, but that we do so in a way that my lovely colleague Edgar Peterson talks about radical incrementalism. In other words, that the things that we do now help us to get better and better and to improve and to improve. So that's the second thing that I would say. Have a slightly different sense of scale, maybe have a slightly different sense of time. And then finally, the third thing that I would really highlight is the question of leadership and of local leadership. And I don't know if I have exactly the same perspective on this as other people in the room, but for me, what's really important is making sure that you are able to bring local community leaders into engagements with the bigger scale, where they, not only the knowledge that they have is really important, but where they begin to understand how the rest of the system works. And so that there's a proper interface, if you like, between the local scale, the city scale, and sometimes even the national scale. So it does seem to me to be some really important kinds of things that we could be trying to kind of accentuate in our political practice.
I'd like to pick up on what Susan was talking about, in particular the necessity of thinking about whole communities and the necessity of thinking about what to do today, but also what to do in the future. I think we simply have to realize that in many places in the world, there will be an enormous amount of population growth. And the question we have to ask, do we want this to be in the same kind of way that's happening today? Do we want to be producing more informal settlements that don't have proper services that they should have? And so the real question here is, how can we balance what's happening already and what kind of improvements can we deal with and make it there, yet at the same time anticipate the future so that we're not recreating situations that are going to be more costly and more difficult to bring up the standard in the future. I also would agree with the necessity of calibrating the relationships between the community leaders, the municipal leaders, the state or provincial leaders, and the national leaders. There are certain things that national governments do that local governments can't do. We have to figure out in each place what those relationships are and make those work. And lastly, I'd like to talk a little about the global efforts that are going on right now. They may seem a little distant, but they will be able to provide tools for each level of leadership to act. And what I'm talking about in particular are two things, well, actually four things that are happening right now in the next year or so. These all have to do directly and indirectly with cities. I'll just take them sequentially. In July, as you may or may not know, there will be a UN conference called Financing for Development. It is imperative that we get some language in the outcome document of that particular conference about attention to the need for local finance and providing the financial ability for municipalities or localities to do what they have to do with regard to those things that I was talking about before. In September, we'll have the approval of the Sustainable Development Goals. And as you probably know, there is one on cities and human settlements, And that has 7 targets, again, very closely related to the things that need to happen to make cities and human settlements prosperous and sustainable, resilient, inclusive, and so forth. We need to use those devices, those targets that will be passed as weapons, really, to hold our leaders' feet to the fire. And that comes from having a very strong civil society that, number one, informed about these things, and number two, knows what levers to push. And then in the fall, in November, December, there'll be the climate change conference. For anybody who's even there'll be a mayor's compact. There will be pledges about what mayors can do, pushing again for implementation strategies that will deal with making cities better places to live. Very important there. And lastly, come around to October 26th, we will have Habitat 3. Habitat 3, it is hoped, will build on all of these things that I'm talking about to help create a framework, a global framework, global consensus about what we should be doing with our cities. And let's not make this everything in the world. Let's make it very pointed and focused about the very key things we need to do. And I bet everybody in the room has an opinion about that. But I'm going to venture out on a limb and say that I would hope that one of the principal outcomes will be creating the framework, the physical structure for the delivery of the public goods that will make our communities strong, prosperous, and resilient.
Thank you very much to both of you. Really interesting. I'm not sure I've ever been in a discussion on development policy where there's been so much consensus about the crucial role of the communities themselves and the way in which they're absolutely, when one is sort of talking about health policy or education policy, we don't often hear the kind of absolute certainty and clarity that we're hearing in this room and outside of the room, that there's, that patients or that children in schools absolutely have to be involved at the heart of the policy making effort. I'm finding it exceptionally inspiring and uplifting, I have to say. Somsuk, do you want to attempt to answer this question? What are the most important things that need to happen to achieve these changes?
Well, I think the very efficient way in which we can solve the problem in a big scale is to bring the resource and bring the opportunity to the people, to the poor people, and to the city level as much as possible. I think in my more than 30 years involvement in this housing development world, we've been listening a lot to the policy side, to the attempt of the government or international institutions Sorry, the telephone is coming in. We have been hearing a lot about the policy and the attempt from the formal institutional side. But no matter how many habitat, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever we're going to do, and emphasis too much on the upper side, I don't think change has happened much. I've been working with the Asian Coalition for Housing Rights to support the citywide upgrading in Asia. And now more than 180 cities that we have the opportunity to support. What we try to do is to reach out to bring this resource to the community and let them organize into the selling group, link into the process, survey how many slums in the city, get the city to work with them, build the city fund and start negotiate for land and so on. I think if you have this kind of process soon as possible, as quick as possible, we can solve slum problem in a big way. Because now community people are ready and they're enthusiastic to solve the slum condition or the poor, insecure housing condition, because the world has changed. They now want to be a part of the proper, acceptable actor in the society. They want to participate in the society, but there's no tools and space. So in my journey to this work in Asia, I found that many of the Asian governments are still not creating enough space for the people and the city to work together to solve the problem in a big way. So I feel the very key issue for the international community is to find a way how the resource, how the policy support will be on the ground by the people, with the people, and let the city and the people manage the citywide housing improvement as much as possible. So if we try to trim down from the bigger, higher policy level into the people level and do it in such a way that the housing development process become the tools for the people to work together. People can survey, people can discuss together, people can save the money, can make the decision together, can negotiate with the relevant organization, and they can sit together as partner with the key institution. If we have the direction like that, I think that the way we build our policy will have to be changed in a big way. Not too much a system by the formal sector down to the people, but creating very, very big space and creating financial tools so the people could get access and to develop the process and the housing development by themselves as much as possible. So the key point is that we have to look at the poor people as resource. We have to look at the people themselves as tools to make change by themselves. And if we look at people as the engine and the resource to make change, I think that the way we develop tools and policy will have to be changed in a big way. Yeah. So this is my key point. I think the approach have to be 180-degree swing from the government side, from the formal side, from purely the private sector side, more to the people. And by making the people in a big scale, at the city scale, at the national scale, work together as organization, as network, we have to build a platform in which community could work with the city, with the university, and with many other actors. So we multiply the actors, allow several actors to do the work of this big change together. And through the process of change, they are changing themselves. They are changing the perception. They're changing the relationship between themselves and the city and so on. So housing development is not just a physical housing delivery arrangement as such. We are talking too much about units or the sort of individual arrangement for each person or each family. We have to look at housing as tools to build community, to build people, to build the city, and to hold the system of people together. So if we look at people as a very important target, then we have to change the approach of housing in a big way, I think.
Thank you.
And that is possible because we have done the citywide upgrading in Thailand in more than 200 cities and in Asia. So now, I mean, the world is ready, the people are ready, so we have to think about the direction in this way, yeah.
Thank you very much indeed. Very, very strong, very inspiring. David, I have to say, I'm left slightly wondering what the role for governments is in all this. We've heard very inspiringly and persuasively what, you know, that the political argument, in a sense, and the struggle has been to get governments to give power and money away and hand it down to the level of communities who, as we've seen, have to be the kind of critical actor in this. But what remains, which is a critical function that only governments can do? Is there a role for governments in this, and what is it?
Do I have to press anything?
No, you just have to talk.
Well, perhaps some of you need reminding. Sumsuk Bunyabancha is not a community activist. She headed the Community Organisation Development Institute that was described in the case study earlier. She headed the UCDO in Thailand. So here is an example of someone that refashioned a national government fund to do all the things that she mentioned, that community organizations could draw on the funds, could choose what to do, could negotiate with the landowners on land, try and buy it or rent it, if not, find somewhere else, and how the people manage the whole upgrading process. One of the delights going to Thailand, which I do quite regularly, is to go and visit what were slum communities that have been transformed. It's been transformed by the people themselves with the support of government. And I should stress, with the support of government. Community organizations can't build trunk sewers and trunk storm drains. They can build the community stuff, but it's got to be integrated into the larger systems. But maybe the key issue is not community-driven stuff, but community-driven stuff that pulls in local government. Another example that we need to reflect on is the role of federations of slum dwellers, federations of shack dwellers. There's now federations of shack dwellers in over 30 nations. At their foundation, there's 16,000 savings groups. All of those federations are doing things. They're building homes, they're building toilets, they're upgrading. But all of them know that their achievements to go to city scale depend on local governments that work with them. So just in the same way that Sumsuk explained in this initiative to support community initiatives all over Asia, the key was to get the engagement of local government. So with the federations too, you've got this desire to get local government working with you. And there's over 100 cities where the federations and local governments have joint funds that are jointly managed. There's many cities which have gone to try and go across the whole city in upgrading informal settlements with local government and civil society working together. To me, that's the most exciting thing that's happening now.
Thank you very much. I'm going to turn it over for questions in a minute, but I just wanted to push on a couple of other things. We've so far talked really about all the things that are going well, but I just want to ask our panel here about some of the barriers, some of the things which are the kind of major obstacles that we see. So Eugenie, I'm interested in the context of UN Habitat and the World Urban Campaign. What is the main thing that you're campaigning against? What's the biggest problem here that you think needs to be solved at a global level? Can you?
Is developing capacity at the local level, so at all levels, to manage urban growth, current urban development and urban growth. So it's the capacity to manage everything that's related to that, whether it's knowing how to do a cadastral map, whether it's knowing how to create a city that is creditworthy so that it can enter the financial markets and find ways to raise other funds for the necessities, to pay for the necessities that need to be accomplished. And so there's this huge lack of capacity at every level. So finding ways to push for capacity in the management area, as well as pushing for what one might call the principles of good and sustainable development, are the things that we are working on.
Thank you. I can imagine that appealing to donors for money for more bureaucrats is never going to be an attractive proposition, but very necessary, as we know.
I disagree with that. I think that, just as we've heard from the two previous speakers, that it's necessary for community groups to work with municipal government. You can't work profitably with municipal government on either side unless people are well educated and trained in what's necessary to do on both sides to create cities that function well. So you're not talking about more bureaucrats, you're talking about well-trained, with capacity, ability to execute and deliver the kinds of things that need to be done.
Okay, I stand corrected. Sumsuk, at the regional level, the work that, as David so beautifully described, the absolutely critical role that you play across a whole range of different policy areas. What do you think? What do you think are the critical barriers? What are the main things that you would like to see changed quickly, if you could wave a magic wand and make that happen?
Okay. In my so many years experience in Asia, in Thailand, I think there are no problems at all on the community side. No matter how poor they are okay, and they are ready. They are eager to make change, and they're able to make it, and the capacity how to make it possible, only that is the problem of the supporter side, but energy and readiness is there. So I look at people as something which is very much possible.
Susan, could you just mute
now
your mic?
the problem that I feel, the serious problem, there are two major things. One is the financial system. Until today, I haven't seen much the more friendly financial system that could reach out to the poor, because you have the formal finance and you have the informal finance from the people side. There's a need for the adjustment between the formal system and the people financial system, And this is why the community saving is so important, because community saving is act as a community fund system, and it act as a bridge between the two systems. But there are insufficient finance from the formal side that can reach to the poor and allow the poor the freedom to be the entrepreneur or to be the actor. Unfortunately, because we have so much money up above, but not so much money on the ground, and the money that go to the ground is tend to be restrictive, to tell the people what to do, this and that, which is not going to change the problem. So this is one issue. Finance from the institution, either the bank system, the Asian Development Bank or the World Bank, is not working very well. It tends to be too formalized, too stiff, to reach the poor. Same as the government. The second point will be the capacity of the institution, which relate to the first point. But I think that the world changed so fast, so rapidly. If institution can understand this lots of energy, this lots of potential in the people, and know how to create space to make the linkage between the energy and the resource, and how to make it possible by the people themselves. This we can change all this slum problem in such a short time. I feel we have the problem with this capacity to understand how people process are working. How the government would understand that you are dealing with people who are okay, people who want to make change. But we always look at people as something illegal, unable, something that you have to suppress, or something you have to instruct them to do on the thing that they don't understand. And it's very much from the upper side instruction. So if we understand more the energy and creating tools and resource and process, and allow people to act, this we can deal with the problem in a big way. So the second point, which is a problem, is capacity of the formal institution, either international or national.
Thank you very much. Susan, is there anything you want to add to that list? We have capacity, finance as two of the really critical barriers, particularly from the perspective of African cities and policy making. Is there anything that we're missing from that list?
Yeah, I think the one thing I would add to that is the difficulty of complexity. To pretend that this is just a problem of political will, and of an inability by the rich to address the needs of the poor, is of course true, but it's a necessary but not a sufficient condition to understanding what we have to do and what the barriers are to acting. I mean, communities are not all benign, they're extremely complex. Similarly, I think that particularly in the African context, the complexities which poor communities have to navigate, because the institutions are so overlain, so incomplete, so dysfunctional, so overlapping, means that there's a bureaucratic entanglement, both within communities and also between communities, and then within states and powers that have resources. So I think it's one thing sets the African condition apart in a way. It's this idea that you you need quite a lot of knowledge and expertise to find your way through to where the money is and where the power is to get done what you need to have done. And that kind of expertise is very difficult to acquire because it's not legible, it's not easily written down, it's not easily codified, it hasn't been happening for lots of generations, and things are changing very, very rapidly. So this sort of barrier of managing complexity would be one of the things that I would add.
Thank you very much indeed. Capacity, finance, and the difficulties of managing complexity. Sorry, Somsu, can you possibly mute your microphone when you're not speaking? We're getting kind of some funny feedback echoing around.
Okay.
Thank you. David, before I turn over to the audience, is there anything you want to add to this list of the kind of critical barriers that we need to think about when we're thinking about how to get progress in this area?
Very quickly, stop evictions. What worries me about Ahmedabad, having had a lot of successful initiatives, it's now forcibly resettling more people and putting them in places that are so distant from employment and their social contacts. The second is local governments that are accountable to the urban poor. And maybe the thing that we've missed is in Latin America, which Paula emphasized, that we do have examples in Latin America of local governments that are accountable, city mayors elected for the first time, city councils elected for the first time, which have enormously improved water, sanitation, drainage, healthcare, schools. Many have also instituted participatory budgeting, giving much more transparency to the whole decision-making process and involving each district in decisions. The third, and the one that drives me crazy, is international agencies with all the funds are incapable of working at local level, incapable of engaging with city government, incapable of engaging with civil society. And yet, as Sumsuk says, all the energy and all the vitality and all the capacity is there. And we go back to that point that she made that needs to be repeated time and time again. Where there's energy, where there's capacity, where there's accountability, why aren't the funding systems changing to support it? And we've got examples from the Asian Coalition for Community Action, 2,000 community initiatives, 215 cities, 18 nations, which has been driving change. Now, the scale of funding is tiny. It's less than 10% of an average World Bank loan. How come these amazing civil society-driven initiatives trying to work with local governments aren't getting the support they deserve?
Thank you. I think this funding question is fascinating. I'd like to come back to that if we can through the rest of the day. But let me now invite questions, brief questions, comments. As ever, the housekeeping rules, of course, please introduce yourself. Please speak briefly. If you have a question, get straight to the question. If you have a comment, please very much welcome that, but please make it pithy. Think Twitter. What I'm going to do is take groups of maybe 3 questions at a time. If it seems appropriate for the panel to respond, then we'll do so. If not, we'll just keep the conversation flowing. I'm very aware that people didn't get a chance to ask questions or make comments on the case studies this morning, so please, if you'd like to incorporate that into what you want to say, please do so. Right, that's enough from me. Let me start over here. 1, 2, 3. I promised you there in the white shirt the first go, so let me...
Cheers. I'm not sure if Susan's still here, but it was going to be partially a question to her, but it was an interesting point raised.
Can you just say who you are?
Oh, sorry, I'm Ben. I work at PricewaterhouseCoopers in international development, and we're focusing a bit on urbanisation at the moment. So I found the point about the Ahmedabad municipal corporations, municipal bonds quite interesting, and how this could sort of incentivize people to buy these bonds if they know it's the money sort of being reinvested into their own community. I was just wondering what the sort of price point was for these bonds and where it's, what kind of range of bonds are available, whether they're kind of available for all income groups or whether they're targeted at specific buyers, and basically if there's any comments around that.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Do you want to pass the microphone to the person who gave it to you, in fact?
Hi, Brendan Halloran from the Transparency and Accountability Initiative. We've been talking about the role and importance of citizens and communities in engaging with local governments. Clearly that needs to happen through kind of some kind of developed civil society organization. At the same time, we're seeing closing civic space that's really challenging the opportunities for citizens to organize and engage with government and question. So how do you see that civic space issue affecting the need for civil societies and communities to play an active role?
Thank you. And just here in the front, yeah.
Hello, I'm Ipshita Basu from the University of Surrey. I think I guess I'm responding more to the case study of Ahmedabad, but also the conversation that Susan M. Solmskog has just shared with us. I think we need to nuance a little bit the people living in the city. So for instance, the Ahmedabad model, which is being replicated across India as a smart city model, is basically a middle class driven model. So it's decidedly an attempt at changing the way in which urban governance works so that it's led more by private investment, more by a kind of managerial class than by local representation. So it's not as much a community-driven model in the way in which one would think about, which enables poor, but is actually more exclusionary, and I would say actually similar to the special economic zone model that has been practiced in India quite a lot to enable private investment. So I think the role of the middle class in kind of taking the upper middle class and taking over urban development policy and interventions is quite significant. And we need to nuance community and urban citizens when we think about whose voice we want to hear or give capabilities for.
Absolutely. I'm going to just ask for some responses now and then come back to a second round in a minute. Susan, do you want to come round here? So that we can have just a brief response on some of the points about India, and then I'm going to go back to the panel.
Right. On the question of the municipal bonds, that's quite a technical question, and I don't think that I can confidently give a thorough answer. We do, the municipal bonds, the initial one was floated on the market to fund water and sanitation work, and I think we could probably help you with some sources to find out some more detailed information about that. I also just wanted to comment on the point around the model being taken forward with smart cities. We purposely didn't look at what was happening in a lot of detail in terms of what's being exported nationally, because we wanted to really focus on what had happened in Ahmedabad over the last 20 years and how progress had been driven. And I think that there really are a number of elements of what has happened that actually are very inclusive of the poor. And it may be the case that some of those elements are actually not being picked up in the national model. And that, I think, is one of the key issues of debate that's happening in India really today. So.